My name is Olivia Daniels, and I was always told that innovation wasn't in my blood. 3 weeks ago, I stood in the back of a gleaming conference room, watching as my brother Michael presented my prototype to his investors, claiming it as his own. The room erupted in applause while Michael basked in the praise. He never saw me slip out, never noticed as I made one phone call that would change everything. By next week, those same investors were sitting in my modest apartment, signing a deal that would leave my family's legacy in shambles. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you first, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning family betrayal into unexpected triumph. Growing up in the shadow of Daniels Manufacturing wasn't easy. Our family business, a mid-sized company producing industrial equipment in Portland, was my father's pride and joy, and Michael's birthright. From childhood, the pattern was clear. Michael was groomed to take over, while I was gently but persistently steered toward more suitable pursuits for a daughter. Leave the technical stuff to your brother, Dad would say whenever I showed interest in the engineering aspects of the business. Mom would add her well-meaning but painful agreement. Sweetheart, you have such a creative mind. Maybe marketing or HR would suit you better. I remember the summer I turned 14, when I built my first small motor from scraps found in the company's discard pile. I'd spent weeks secretly working on it, studying manuals and online tutorials. When I proudly displayed it at the dinner table, Dad glanced at it briefly and said, "That's nice, Olivia. Did you make that in art class?" Meanwhile, Michael's weekend ride along with the sales team warranted a celebratory dinner and stories retold for weeks. That night, I took my little motor back to my room and cried, but I didn't stop tinkering. If anything, being dismissed only strengthened my resolve to prove them wrong. As we grew older, the divide only widened. Michael struggled through engineering classes in college, barely maintaining a C average, while I graduated at the top of my class with a dual degree in mechanical engineering and business. Yet when we both returned home, the path was already set in stone. Michael needs to learn every aspect of the business, Dad explained during a family dinner, announcing my brother's new position as Assistant Director of Operations. "What about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom patted my hand. "We found a wonderful spot for you in HR, dear. With your people skills, you'll be perfect." I accepted the HR position because it was the only way to get my foot in the door. While Michael attended executive meetings and toured manufacturing floors, I processed payroll and organized company picnics. During lunch breaks and after hours, I would wander the production facility, talking to the engineers and line workers. I learned their frustrations with our outdated equipment, particularly our industrial valve system that frequently caused production delays. At night, I sketched ideas in my apartment, developing concepts for a more efficient hydraulic valve that could increase production speed by nearly 30%. After 6 months of research and design, I finally worked up the courage to request a meeting with my father. "Dad, I've been working on something that could revolutionize our production line," I said, spreading my detailed designs across his desk. He glanced at them briefly, confusion crossing his face. "Olivia, this is engineering. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this isn't your department." He shuffled the papers back together. "Besides, Michael has been working with our engineering team on process improvements. We don't want to duplicate efforts." I tried to keep my voice level. "Has Michael shown you any concrete designs? Any prototypes?" Dad's expression hardened. "That's not your concern. Michael understands the business in a way you don't. Now, I believe the HR department is organizing the retirement party for Bill next week. Perhaps you should focus on that." I left his office feeling humiliated, but not defeated. If they wouldn't listen to me within the company structure, I would need to find another way. That evening, I withdrew my life savings, $15,000 I'd been setting aside for a down payment on a house, and rented a small workshop space across town. By day, I was the dutiful daughter working in HR. By night, I became the engineer I'd always known I could be. Over the next 18 months, I developed, tested, and refined my hydraulic valve system. I worked with a small local manufacturer to create a prototype, signing non-disclosure agreements to protect my intellectual property. The prototype exceeded even my expectations, demonstrating a 32% efficiency increase with lower maintenance requirements than our current system. I filed for a patent under my own name, not the company's, using the last of my savings to pay the legal fees. During this time, Daniels Manufacturing faced increasing pressure from competitors. Our outdated equipment was making us less competitive and profits were declining. Family dinners became tense affairs, with Dad drilling Michael about solutions while I silently passed dishes around the table. Michael promised innovations and turnarounds that never materialized, while my solution gathered dust in my rented workshop. The breaking point came at last year's Thanksgiving dinner. Uncle James, Dad's brother and a minor shareholder in the company, asked about the company's innovation strategy. Before Dad could answer, Michael jumped in with confidence. Actually, I've been developing some proprietary technology that will put us years ahead of the competition. I can't share details yet, but it's going to change everything. My fork clattered against my plate. This was the first anyone had heard of Michael's supposed innovation. Dad beamed with pride while Mom squeezed Michael's shoulder. That's wonderful, honey. Always knew you had your father's inventive spirit. What exactly is this innovation? I asked, unable to contain myself. Michael smirked. You wouldn't understand the technical aspects, Olivia. It's quite complex. Try me, I challenged. Dad intervened. Olivia, this isn't the time. We don't discuss confidential business matters at family gatherings. Funny. Michael just did exactly that, I pointed out. That's different, Mom said. Michael's leading the project. And I'm just the HR girl, right? I stood up, throwing my napkin on the table. Excuse me, I need some air. Outside in the crisp autumn night, I made a decision. I would no longer fight for recognition within a system designed to exclude me. Instead, I would build something of my own. Something so impressive they couldn't ignore it. In January, Dad announced his retirement. The succession plan surprised no one. Michael would take over as CEO, effective immediately. There was a grand ceremony with speeches about legacy and family tradition. I sat in the back row, applauding politely while my colleagues whispered about nepotism. A few sympathetic souls patted my arm, assuming I must be heartbroken to be passed over. They had no idea I was already plotting my exit. I submitted my resignation the following week. Dad seemed genuinely surprised. But why, Olivia? You've built a wonderful department here. I want to explore other opportunities, I said simply. Is this because of Michael's promotion? Because we've always been clear about the succession plan. No, Dad. It's because I finally understand that I'll never be valued here for what I can truly offer. He sighed. You're being dramatic. We value you enormously. As the HR manager, yes. Never as an engineer, never as a potential leader. Because that's not where your strengths lie, he insisted. I didn't argue further. What was the point? I cleaned out my desk that afternoon, said goodbye to my team, and walked out of Daniels Manufacturing for what I thought would be the last time. The next 6 months were both terrifying and exhilarating. I took a part-time job as an engineering consultant to pay the bills while focusing on refining my prototype and developing a business plan. I approached several potential investors but found them hesitant to back a solo female founder in the industrial manufacturing sector. Still, I persisted, improving my pitch and expanding my network. Meanwhile, Daniels Manufacturing was struggling. Without new products or innovations, they were losing market share rapidly. Industry gossip suggested Michael was in over his head, making costly mistakes and alienating long-term clients. My father, supposedly retired, was increasingly spotted back at the office, trying to mitigate the damage. Then came the rumor that changed everything. Daniels Manufacturing was seeking outside investment to stay afloat. Michael had apparently approached Wellington Capital, a mid-sized investment firm specializing in industrial technologies, pitching them on a major innovation that would revitalize the company. An old colleague texted me. Not sure what Michael's selling them, but Wellington seems interested. Big meeting next Thursday. I felt sick to my stomach. What innovation could Michael possibly be pitching? The company hadn't developed anything significant in years. Unless, my suspicions were confirmed 2 days later when my patent attorney called in a panic. Olivia, someone's been asking questions about your patent application. They're trying to determine if there are any loopholes or if the patent could be challenged. Who? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A law firm representing Daniels Manufacturing. The betrayal stung, but it didn't surprise me. Michael must have somehow discovered my prototype, perhaps through someone at the local manufacturer I'd worked with. Now he was trying to claim it as the company's intellectual property, or worse, as his own innovation. I spent the next week in a frenzy of preparation. I contacted Wellington Capital directly, requesting a meeting with their lead investment team. My connection was tenuous, a former classmate who now worked in their administrative department, but it was enough to get me 15 minutes on their calendar the day after Michael's presentation, which brings me to 3 weeks ago, the day everything changed. I couldn't resist attending Michael's presentation to Wellington. As a former employee, I could plausibly claim to be there supporting the company. I slipped into the back of the conference room just as Michael began his pitch. Ladies and gentlemen, he said confidently, standing beside a sleek display case covered with a velvet cloth. Daniels Manufacturing has been a leader in industrial equipment for over 40 years. But today, we're not just continuing that legacy. We're revolutionizing it. With a flourish, he pulled away the cloth to reveal my prototype. My prototype. The very one I'd spent 18 months designing, building, and perfecting in my rented workshop. This proprietary hydraulic valve system, Michael continued, designed by our engineering team under my direction, will increase production efficiency by over 30%. It's patent pending and ready for implementation. I felt the blood drain from my face as Wellington's investors leaned forward, clearly impressed. Michael fielded their technical questions with rehearsed answers that I recognized as simplified versions of my own explanations. He couldn't answer the more complex engineering queries, deflecting with, "I'd have to consult with my technical team on those specifics." When the presentation concluded, the lead investor, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor Wellington herself, shook Michael's hand. "Impressive, Mr. Daniels. This could be exactly what we're looking for. We'll be in touch very soon." As the room emptied, I slipped out unnoticed. Once in my car, I made a single phone call to my patent attorney. "They're using my prototype," I told him. "I need documentation proving ownership, and I need it by tomorrow morning." The next day, dressed in my most professional attire, I arrived at Wellington Capital for my scheduled 15 minutes. To my surprise, Eleanor Wellington herself greeted me. "Ms. Daniels, is it? Interesting timing for this meeting." "It's no coincidence," I admitted. "I was at yesterday's presentation." Her eyebrow raised slightly. "I see. And what exactly is your connection to Daniels Manufacturing?" "I'm the former HR director," I explained, "and also the inventor and patent holder of the valve system my brother presented to you yesterday." The surprise on her face was evident. Without another word, she ushered me into her private office where I laid out my documentation: the original designs, patent application, prototype development records, and witness statements from the manufacturers who had worked with me. "This is unexpected," Eleanor said, reviewing the materials. "Your brother presented this as the company's innovation." "It's not," I stated firmly. "It's mine. Developed on my own time with my own resources after the company, after my family, repeatedly dismissed my engineering capabilities." Eleanor studied me for a moment. "Why are you bringing this to me? Why not take legal action against your brother and the company?" "Because I believe in this technology," I answered honestly. "It works. It will revolutionize production processes. But Daniels Manufacturing isn't the right vehicle for it. Not anymore." "And you are?" I slid my business plan across the desk. "I don't have a company yet, but I have everything needed to build one. What I don't have is capital." Eleanor's lips curved into a slight smile as she opened the folder. "Ms. Daniels, I believe our 15 minutes just turned into a proper meeting. Let me call in my team." What happened next still feels surreal. Instead of the brief introduction I'd expected, I spent 3 hours with Wellington's investment team, walking them through every aspect of my design, answering their most technical questions with ease. By the end of the meeting, Eleanor made her position clear. We were prepared to invest $2.5 million in Daniels Manufacturing, largely based on this innovation. I see no reason why that investment shouldn't go to the actual inventor instead. I nearly fell out of my chair. "You're offering me $2.5 million in exchange for a 30% equity stake in your new venture?" "Yes. With some conditions, of course." Those conditions included a detailed implementation plan, a stronger management team, and production capabilities. Over the next week, I worked around the clock to meet their requirements. Meanwhile, Wellington Capital went suspiciously quiet with Daniels Manufacturing. 10 days after my meeting with Wellington, I received the call I'd been waiting for. The investment was approved. Wellington Capital would provide $5 million to launch Olivia Daniels Engineering, a new company focused on innovative hydraulic systems for industrial applications. The contract was signed in my small apartment, with Eleanor Wellington herself attending. As the last signature dried, she handed me a glass of champagne. "There's one more thing you should know, Olivia. We're not just investing in your company. We've also declined to invest in Daniels Manufacturing." I nearly choked on my champagne. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That we discovered the innovation they presented wasn't actually theirs to offer." She smiled. "Your brother was quite shocked. Your father even more so." The fallout was immediate and dramatic. Michael called me that same evening, his voice trembling with rage. "What the hell did you do? You've ruined everything." "I did nothing but claim what was rightfully mine," I replied calmly. "That valve system belongs to the company. You developed it while you worked for us." "No, Michael. I developed it on my own time, with my own money, after being relegated to HR despite my engineering qualifications. Check the patent office records." "Dad is furious," he threatened. "He's talking about legal action. He'd lose," I said simply. "But feel free to waste what's left of the company's resources on pointless litigation." Next came the call from my father. Unlike Michael's rage, his voice carried a mixture of disbelief and something I'd never heard from him before: uncertainty. "Olivia," he began, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Dad. Michael tried to present my invention as his own. I had the documentation to prove otherwise. If you had innovations to offer, you should have brought them to the family, to the company, he insisted. I did. You dismissed them without even looking at them, remember? You told me to focus on planning Bill's retirement party instead. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Finally, he sighed heavily. We need to talk about this as a family. Can you come to dinner on Sunday? I agreed, though not without apprehension. The Sunday dinner would be the first time I'd face my entire family since securing the investment that had simultaneously launched my future and jeopardized theirs. When Sunday arrived, I dressed carefully in a professional blue dress, applied light makeup, and drove to my parents' home with a strange sense of calm. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being seen. The atmosphere was tense from the moment I arrived. Mom hugged me stiffly, Dad nodded without meeting my eyes, and Michael glared from across the room. We made awkward small talk through appetizers, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room until Dad finally cleared his throat as Mom served the main course. Olivia? We need to discuss this situation with Wellington Capital. I set down my fork. What about it specifically? They've declined to invest in Daniels Manufacturing because of some confusion regarding the valve system Michael presented. There was no confusion, I said evenly. Michael presented my patented design as if it belonged to the company. It doesn't. Michael slammed his hand on the table. You worked for the company. Anything you developed belongs to Daniels Manufacturing. Check my employment contract, I countered. It covered my work in HR, not engineering. And I developed the valve system on my own time, with my own resources, after you all made it abundantly clear that engineering wasn't my place. You should have come to us first, Dad insisted, his voice strained. I did, I reminded him. You dismissed my designs without even looking at them properly. Mom interjected, Olivia, honey, we've always wanted what's best for you. We just didn't think engineering was your strength. Based on what evidence? I asked. My dual engineering and business degree with honors? My lifelong interest in how things work? Or was it simply because I was born a daughter instead of a son? The uncomfortable silence confirmed what I'd always known, but they'd never admitted. Finally, Dad spoke. Wellington is offering you the investment instead, aren't they? I nodded. The contracts are signed. Olivia Daniels Engineering launches next month. You're competing against your own family, Michael accused. Against your own legacy. No, I corrected him. I'm building my own legacy because I was excluded from this one. There's a difference. Dad looked older suddenly, the weight of his miscalculation evident in the slump of his shoulders. What does this mean for Daniels Manufacturing? That depends on you, I said. Without new investment or innovation, the company will continue to struggle. But it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. What are you suggesting? Dad asked cautiously. A partnership. Olivia Daniels Engineering will need manufacturing capabilities. Daniels Manufacturing has equipment sitting idle due to declining orders. We could establish a manufacturing agreement that benefits both companies. The proposal hung in the air. Michael looked ready to object, but Dad raised a hand to silence him. You'd be willing to work with us? After everything, this isn't about spite, I explained. It's about business. Good business sense says we could help each other. If you're finally willing to see me as an equal, not just as your daughter who belongs in HR. Dad studied me for a long moment, seeing me, truly seeing me, perhaps for the first time. I think we should discuss the details of this potential partnership. And that's how, 3 weeks after Wellington Capital discovered my prototype, I found myself sitting across from my father and brother in a formal business meeting. Not as the HR manager, not as the overlooked daughter, but as the CEO of Olivia Daniels Engineering, negotiating terms for a manufacturing partnership that would ultimately save their company while launching mine. The agreement we reached wasn't perfect, but it was fair. Daniels Manufacturing would produce components for my hydraulic systems, providing them with steady work while I focused on innovation and sales. Michael, humbled by the experience, was notably quieter in meetings, especially when technical discussions arose. Last week, we finalized the first production run of my hydraulic valve system. Standing on the manufacturing floor that I'd once only been allowed to visit during lunch breaks, I watched as the equipment I designed moved through the production process. Dad stood beside me, observing with a new respect in his eyes. I was wrong about you, Olivia, he said quietly. I've been wrong for a very long time. Yes, I agreed. You were. I'm sorry, he added, the words clearly difficult for him. I know, I replied. And I did know. The apology wasn't just in his words, but in his actions, in the way he now consulted me on technical matters, in how he introduced me to industry colleagues as my daughter, the engineer, and CEO. As for Michael, our relationship remains complicated. The betrayal cut deep, but we're learning to work together in this new reality where the power dynamic has shifted. He's not a bad person, just a privileged one who never had to fight for recognition. Now he's learning what that feels like, and perhaps becoming a better man in the process. Mom still occasionally says things like, "I never would have imagined you in this role," but now it comes with a tone of wonder rather than dismissal. Small steps, but meaningful ones. The most satisfying moment came last month at the Regional Industrial Technology Conference. I was presenting my hydraulic system to an audience of industry professionals when I spotted Wellington's investment team in the front row. Beside them sat my father, watching with undisguised pride as I fielded complex technical questions with ease. Later, I overheard him telling a colleague, "That's my daughter, the innovator. Always knew she had something special." The revisionist history made me smile. People will rewrite the past to make peace with the present. What matters is that I know the truth, both about their dismissal and about my own capabilities. Today, Olivia Daniels Engineering is projecting first-year revenues of $8 million. We're developing 2 new hydraulic systems that promise even greater efficiency gains. Daniels Manufacturing is stabilizing under our partnership agreement, though Dad has taken a more active role again, working alongside Michael to rebuild client relationships. As for me, I finally found my place, not the one they tried to assign me, but the one I created for myself. The journey wasn't about proving them wrong, though that satisfaction certainly exists. It was about proving myself right, about having the courage to build something when no one would give me the blueprint. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because you didn't fit someone else's expectations, know this. Your value doesn't diminish because others fail to see it. Sometimes the greatest innovations come from those who were never invited to the table, so they build their own. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength in the face of family dynamics that try to limit your potential. I'd love to hear in the comments about a time when you had to forge your own path against expectations. Remember, sometimes being underestimated is your greatest advantage. It means no one sees you coming until you've already succeeded.